Dinosaurs. They were inescapable from the 80s to the 90s. From sitcoms,
You do that one more time and I'm gonna throw you across the room.
children movies, a wide range of learning programs, big Hollywood movies, all the way to Saturday morning cartoons. For a brief period of time, dinosaurs ruled the world. Again. Now, for every kid/teen growing up, action figures or toys were probably the easiest thing to come by besides just the screen. But maybe if you were growing out of your Timmy phase, you wanted something a bit more age appropriate. One of my first dinosaur games was a little game called Jurassic Park, mainly the one for the Super Nintendo. Being a young wide-eyed kid, this was okay, but it had dinosaurs, so it made it better. The game was mostly played from an overhead/side view, except for this one part where you would enter facilities and go into a first-person perspective. And for some odd reason, as a kid, this terrified me. The next dinosaur game that came across my radar was Turok, but a few years after that, to many, was a very special game called Dino Crisis. Dino Crisis would be released July 1st, 1999 in Japan, then September 23rd that same year in the US, and finally on October 29th in Europe. Developed by Capcom Production Studio 4 or Planning Room 2. The game started production in 1996 with Shu Takami as starting director, and even having a portion of the game's story done before being replaced by Shinji Mikami, mostly due to Shu being a bit inexperienced. He'll get another shot later, don't worry. The original setting and idea for the game was more jungle and less prehistoric, using a cast of enemies that resembled more of something you'd see at the zoo. Mikami would be credited for the change to dinosaur, but one philosophy behind the game that would stick would be panic. This is the key word when describing Dino Crisis and separating it from other titles it might have got lumped with. The game would still be a survival horror at its core, but maintaining a more action atmosphere with the horror coming from a sense of constant adrenaline. Mikami would akin Dino Crisis to a more visceral horror like riding a roller coaster. Prior to making this video, I had zero knowledge of this game. I knew that the main character had red hair, dinosaurs were involved, and it played kind of like Resident Evil. That last point is kind of important. While Dino Crisis does play in terms of controls like Resident Evil, this game is very, very different. The game opens with an email.
You've got mail.
The plot of Dino Crisis is kind of on par with its sister game though. This man here named Tom snuck into a military experiment facility posing as a scientist and found this other scientist who everyone thought was dead due to an experiment gone wrong, although he hasn't been able to fully confirm it. So the squad is sent in, consisting of our main character Regina, Gel, Rick, and the most important man in this game, Cooper. To continue with the nostalgia train a little bit, these CG cutscenes anytime they would pop up would just remind me a lot of those old Nickelodeon shows that had, those like bad CGI. Rick runs off to the control room and we're left to explore our first area. The first thing that was noticeable and threw me off completely was items. I was expecting it to be similar to that of Resident Evil games, but instead every item has the same look and spins in a circle, kind of like that other game. Key items are the more unique looking ones. We can also reach things on the top shelves without needing to move stairs. It's kind of nice. Inventory in this game is also completely different. Regina does have a limited inventory, but key items have their separate space alongside your weapons not taking up a slot. The downside to this is ammo doesn't stack all that high, making most of your decisions coming down to carrying more health or more ammo. Or mixing a bit of both, and speaking of mixing, you'll be picking up a lot of items whose sole purpose is to mix, allowing you to create sleeping darts, poison darts, stronger healing, and a few other things. You also have this item here called resuscitation, which sounds like what it is. If you were to die while having this item in your inventory, you'll respawn outside of the room you just died at. It's definitely a little weird in its use, but I'm sure it'll come in handy. Gail will snatch up our key we just picked up, we'll run down a long walkway that isn't sketchy at all, and come across a mutilated body.
That's disgusting.
Door animations are still around, but instead of watching a door open, we now watch someone open the door with the name of the room to the side. And inside here we'll be thrown our first puzzle, which, if you know me, I was excited to see early. The puzzles of Dino Crisis on your first run could be head scratchers. This one here feels like a logical puzzle, using your environment as a clue as opposed to a riddle from a memo, since the flyers on the wall don't really help. The solution here is to look at the levers to the side and basically match the correct color, and Waluigi, we got power.
Oh yeah.
Some gunshots go off in the distance. When we arrive, our buddy Gale is nowhere to be seen, and there's a giant hole in the wall. A raptor then appears, who will be the most common enemy. What better way to introduce ourselves than to put a few bullets into him? One thing about encounters, like any survival horror game, it's better to just run. This game also has a bleeding mechanic where you'll leave a trail of blood as you walk when you're injured, which can be problematic. And now, our panic mechanic. So for this game, they had the thought, what if every enemy was like Nemesis? So every single enemy can follow you between rooms, creating the whole panic feeling. Rick will give us a call in, while Regina rambles about some lizards, and Rick gives the most convincing laugh I've heard in a minute. Dino Crisis does a good job playing with expectations, like this long hallway with glass. You know it's coming, and they even tease you with a cutscene. But it's not yet. Instead, we get to feel like an agent and climb some rope.
Rose whiplash!
I really thought a raptor would jump up here at some point in the game, as there's only a handful of vent sections, but nope, it's completely safe. We'll find Rick in the control room, he'll turn off some of those shutters for us, those laser looking things, and it's time to properly explore. Our first room we encounter is our save room, which just throws a shotgun at us, and I was baffled. I was not expecting that. There's also a floating disc to the side, and a few other goodies in here, alongside some memos, and memos in Dino Crisis are incredibly important. It's where you'll find a lot of answers to things, but because of that, it makes the fact that Regina doesn't keep those files kind of annoying. So you'll have to remember where a memo was if you need to read it, so if you ever come across a memo that has numbers in it, it's probably best to write that down somewhere. Speaking of annoying, the way to save the game is very different. In order to save, you have to leave the room. No typewriter, no ink ribbons, it's all unlimited saving. Unlimited saving isn't really a problem, and neither is the way to save, it's just a casual nitpick. The save room theme is pretty good though, and it's most likely the backtrack I've been using so far. We also picked up a plug in that room, and plugs are used for this game's version of the item box. They're all color coded, green means healing items, red means ammo and weapon mixers, and yellow is a mix of both. Each box also needs a different amount of plugs. Greens are usually 1, while yellow is 2, and red ranges from 2 to 3. The good thing is, each color box is connected, so if you open a green box early and left some ammo there, you can still pick it up late game by accessing another green box. These add some fun decision making, as plugs are limited, so you need to make a conscious choice on which box you need to open. Our main room of interest is going to be this office right here, but it's locked, and locked rooms in this game require 2 keys or 2 discs, the input disc and the code disc of the corresponding letter. However, you can't just mash the enter button. In order to unlock the door, there's also a code. Dino Crisis is heavy on puzzles, and these doors are the head scratchers I mentioned earlier, well, the later ones. As they progressively get harder, this first one is simple though. And thanks to the memo we found earlier, we can break this code by removing the letters in the key, and we'll be able to input the password head. In this room is our first
survivor.
He doesn't really give us much insight, but he does give us a card and this well-delivered line.
Kirk.
There's another disc here, but there's also... After playing with the resuscitation system a bit, we'll put 2 and 2 together and find another puzzle in this room. This is another logical puzzle using the new key we just got and the previous one we picked up. Flipping the cards around will let us make out a few numbers, giving us the numbers 705037, which unlocks the safe and gives us another key item, keycard L. We can also punch in a few numbers over in the lounge to pick up some weapon parts for our handgun. Head outside for some fresh air, and the second disc we need alongside a very bare but informative memo. Rick calls in telling us he caught a glimpse of someone on the security cameras and to check it out. Sure. Another remove the letters code and we're into the elevator hall. There's been a few bodies just hanging around, but this one has an interesting description. Checking out the training room like Rick requested, we'll come across a rusted key and danger. These are like QTEs without the button prompts, and instead just mash whatever buttons you can. Hey!
Gale, you're still alive.
I wanted to say that. Anyways, Regina gives us a very philosophical moment.
That's no lizard. It's a dinosaur.
Gale responds appropriately.
Hey, it's always eat or be eaten out in the battlefield.
Then it's back to running around. Inside the office is another interesting memo alongside a computer that can rewrite an ID card, but we'll put that on hold. We're looping back around to how we came in, still no jump scare, and heading back outside to put that new key to use. It's another generator puzzle, so doing the same exact thing as before and just matching the colors. We'll get a call to meet back in the control room, but first, finally, the jump scare. Back in the control room, Rick and Gale have some different opinions on what we should do next, which brings us to a branching path. Gale wants to keep a focus on the mission and investigate the underground, while Rick wants to investigate the distress signal as it might be Tom or Cooper. You'll get a few of these throughout the game. I went with Gale because I was focused on the mission, but choosing Rick here is a bit faster as you'll end up at the same place despite whoever you choose. Heading downstairs, we'll be introduced to another new enemy. This one's a little smaller though. We can just ignore them and go to the right here, and find another save room with an ID card we'll put to use shortly. Then run into Gale and...
Dr. Kirk? Hey, wait!
Regina has some slow reaction speed, and we're left to find another way around. After being chewed on for a second, we'll end up outside and find a very, very important memo that tells you exactly where each disc is to access the labs. So let's disregard that and head over to the strategy room to pick up this Game Boy that lets us scan fingerprints. Alongside our code disc E. Hit the bathroom for a little.
Rose Whiplash!
It's time again for another little puzzle, this time revolving around the dead employees and those memos we saw earlier that were pretty bare. First, we need to take their fingerprint using the Game Boy, and then back inside the office, punch in the number, and then apply the fingerprint. And we have successfully rewritten the ID card to use the elevator. Finally, on the other side, we again get chewed on and read some memos that basically tell us the door's password is a little more complicated. However, this is door L. We picked up an E. Not my proudest moment, as apparently I can't read. So I ran all over this place thinking I must have missed something, but I really didn't. But I did. I figured because I went with the Gale path, it would be pointless to go over where Rick went, but apparently that's where you're supposed to go. Did I spend some time running around clueless? Yes, I did. When heading the right way, we'll get a call from Rick who gives us an update on Tom.
I found Tom.
And
I was too late. He didn't make it.
Then we get this slow pan over to the door like, hey, maybe this is the right way. Dumbass. At the large size elevator, we'll be introduced to Petrie, and dinosaurs are complete assholes. It's not all bad for us though, because we'll come across both discs we need. Thanks, Tom. Well, we're already here, might as well get the power back on. This time, it's gonna be a little different. Still color coordinating though, except we're bringing down pipes of different sizes. This one wasn't too hard either, just a lot of trial and error. Trying to leave, we're still getting picked on, but if you mash your buttons hard enough, this happens. With that, we can finally head over and unlock the laboratory door. The key now just has a bunch of numbers, but the numbers correspond to the alphabet, so the number 3 equals C, etc, etc. Meaning the password is laboratory. Very original, guys. No one's ever stealing from you. Exploring this area further, we'll find our second half of the E-disc, a lock code, and some notes on neutralizing gas, alongside a memo making mention of Kirk's secret room being somewhere in the area. First thing to do is unlock the experimental room using the lock code we just found, where inside we'll find...
a survivor.
The gas puzzle, I didn't really get. I figured to reduce purple we had to use the correct gas color, but it didn't seem to change much until it got to 30, and then I used the correct neutralizer. Anyways, this guy's pretty cooked, but he gives us the key card before we go invisible. I also cooked this raptor, but we don't talk about that. So now we head back to the locker room, input the code that's on the key card, and another puzzle. If you had a phobia of puzzles, this game probably does induce panic. Inside the locker is another key card that has R written on it, and a memo talking about the puzzle we completed earlier. So if you didn't complete it, that's some backtracking you gotta do. Inside the computer room, we can insert the right and left key card, but we need someone else to help activate it. So we call our buddy Gale to help out with the door, but behind the door is another door. With, you guessed it, another puzzle. This time the numbers for the code mean columns, so we remove those and we have a password, energy. You guys are terrible at passwords. Hopefully one of these isn't your name. That would be the worst. The worst! Inside the doc's office, we'll find this glowing circle of blue energy that we can play with. Some notes making mention of what happened tonight, but the doc is still missing. Gale has a few choice of words on the matter.
He's not here.
Why? This operation is taking way too long already.
And things go bad. Seems Kirk sent off an alarm, meaning we need to get out of here, or we'll be stuck here. However, we can't even leave this room until we solve another puzzle. This one has us matching up shapes to get the correct path, but it's kind of immersion breaking, because it feels like we should go pretty fast, but I was stuck here for a minute. Once we fix that, we'll have...
You have 10 minutes until this section is sealed off.
Which brings us to another branching path. We can go guns blazing with Gel or do some more puzzles to escape a bit more safely. So we're doing another puzzle, and be ready to either have some really good memory skills or pen and paper, because this puzzle tasks us with remembering the letters to create a code. The first round is pretty simple. The second round throws in 2 cards but only 1 letter, and the third round flips all the cards around but one will linger, making that the letter you need. We can then escape safely. Just as Regina is slow to reacting, the Doc is pretty slow to escaping, so we'll catch him red-handed and finally confirm that this is in fact
Dr. Kirk?
Gale shows up and threatens to use force, cause of course this guy would. But Kirk isn't ready to leave cause he's still working on his project, also.
You can't do this. I have rights.
This scene right here though is pretty funny.
Then shoot me, idiot. You lame, flat-top, jaw-headed.
Now it's just tidying up a few things so our helicopter can arrive and we can escape into the sunset. Back in the control room, we can access the elevator to bring us to the communication room. We're trying to bring the antenna back online so we can reach our boys up in the helicopter. We just grab the antenna activation key, head on over here, and it's that simple. Rexy shows back up for a little chase, we get into contact with our chopper bros, and it's time to meet at the heliport for evacuation. That's just a quick little run through the front entrance, through a warehouse, with the block moving puzzle. You know, I can't lie to you, I got a little stuck here, you know, camera angles and everything. Also, when Regina pushes something, she like fully pushes it until she can't anymore. I don't know why. Just do a little of this, little of that, and we're through. Oh, there is a grenade gun up here too, you don't want to miss that. Outside on the heliport, first Rick jinxes us.
Finally! You know, I had a really bad feeling about this mission. All things considered, it could have been a lot worse.
Second, Regina has this line.
That's odd. Something must have those animals spooked.
It's not like we just had a run-in with the T-Rex or anything. Anyways, the T-Rex is back, and in the midst of chaos, Kirk runs away, leaving us to our very first boss fight, if you want to call it that. It's not really a fight, so much as it's stall and run around in a circle until Rick gets the door open, where we'll find ourselves in yet another elevator, heading into the lower level, trying to find another way out. Our first stop doesn't really have much to explore, but tucked away in the corner of the room is our CO pass card and also what might be another way to escape. One elevator ride up, and then another down, where we end up on the B3 floor, our final area of the game. Just like the other 2 sections, we need to get the power back on, and one of the batteries here is completely fried. So we just do a little swapping, take this battery, replace it, and power is back on. We're left to explore the area once again, but most things are locked. There is a key we can pick up down this way that'll open up a few things for us though. But first, it's time for an introduction of the most annoying enemy of the game. Look, I don't completely hate these guys, but I definitely don't like them. They're slow enough to run around, but they hit hard and can make it troublesome if you get cornered by 2 of them, as typically these guys love to run in pairs. This side of the area really doesn't matter until the ending in the game, as all we need is this key, then this crane card so we can get this disc, and we'll never come back here again. On the other side of things, we have our rest area and the door to the port, but we still need one more disc to access it. Inside our next save room, we'll find disc S, a key card, and a computer where we can rewrite an ID card again. Yippee. Yippee! This is all stuff for later, so one final time.
Rose whiplash!
Down on the other side of the building, we have this extremely awkward run-in with Gale.
Gale!
Yeah. Well, at least Kirk's running out of places to hide.
Meet a new raptor who looks poisonous, but I don't know if it actually is. Anyways, we pick up our new level C key card and head into the door behind us. We'll grab the last disc we need, and we can finally open up our way to the port, getting out of here by solving puzzles. I'm just gonna let you take a guess at what the password here is. Go ahead, we can wait a little bit. No rush at all. Take your time. Whatever you want to think about, you know? Whatever, you know, think it out. Go ahead. Done yet? Finished? If you guessed waterway, you were correct. We still don't have the port key, but hey.
A survivor.
So now we need to go and save whoever these guys are. Arriving back at the elevator hall, Rexy pays us another visit, but he just ate, so he's a little sleepy. Rexy did end up bringing down the power, so we have to reverse the swap we did earlier and put the power back on by the means of backup generator. Then we can head into the elevator, grab our port key, and also the disc hidden over in the corner, otherwise you'll be running around again as if you missed something because you totally did. If you thought we were going to escape, you were severely mistaken. We're not even close. Oh, okay, we're kind of close, but here, have Rick walking through a closed door for your trouble. There's some weird wave motion thing that's blocking our path, so now we need to find a way around this, and after that I promise you we'll escape. And escape. And escape. We can pick up our last disc ESC here though, and head back to the save room to open up that part of the labs up. The code is stabilizer. There's another locked door here, which is D, and if you picked up the disc over on the elevator, you're only missing one part, which you'll find over in the stabilizer experiment room. For the final code, it brings it all the way around to the beginning, matching the numbers once again to the alphabet. Though, my dyslexia kicked in and the zeros threw me off for a major loop, until I realized it was basically double digits. So, 01, 04, etc. Which will spell out Dr. Kirk. At least he doubled down on the security, requiring 2 keycards to be rewritten in order to access this area. Good job, Kirk. He also made it so he's the only one who can power this machine by requiring his keycard. There's another little puzzle here to turn on the generator, but the important thing is Kirk's registration number here. We still can't do much as we require Kirk's ID card, but we do hear someone get blasted. Back in the room is now a bloody handprint we can use our Game Boy on again. And we can chase down the culprit, who is Kirk, which ultimately leads to one of the final decisions of the game. We can go with Gale's way of just grabbing the spare parts, which are surrounded by dinosaurs, or Rick's way of assembling the parts, which would take longer, but is a lot safer. I chose Rick's, but only because Gale called us dumb.
Don't be ridiculous. Regina doesn't have the technical knowledge for that.
Kirk also hands over an ID card we can rewrite, and it's time for the final main puzzle of the game. Here we need to go to a couple of rooms to grab the parts, consisting of a total of 6. Our first stop is a pretty unique puzzle. It's a sound-based grid which has a sound to each number. There's a memo that makes mention of this place earlier and how they wanted to keep an eye on Kirk, so if you push this shelf here, you'll find a recorder that plays back audio and the code.
We will literally have the power of a god at our disposal. And it will all be attainable if you cooperate with me. The power of a god. How could I refuse?
It took a minute to get this one, as I wasn't really sure what I was hearing until it finally clicked. Basically, 1 different sound, 3 the same sound, and then 2 different sounds to end the recording. Meaning, we just needed to find the pattern that lined up with those 3 same sounds in the middle, giving us the code 367204. Hold on to that number though, it's about to come in handy again. With the 2 parts collected, we can head into the stabilizer design room. There's a memo here that tells us to get the needed parts, we'll need to add some zeros. So if we add a 0 in front of the 3 and 2, we'll get 2 new codes we can use. 0367 and 0204, bringing us to a total of 5 parts. The last part, we can just swipe our disc and grab it, though this game does not give you the easy way out. We still have to manually put each piece together in this weirdly designed minigame. We do have one more stop, and that's to rewrite the ID card. But after that, it's as simple as starting the generator, placing the initializer, then the stabilizer, and watching as things get a little funky. On the other end, Kirk ends up escaping again as Gale saves him from falling debris, and we end up saving Gale. Man's a bit injured though, so he gives us the tracker to show where Kirk is. We'll wind back up in the room to the port with one final decision. See, Gale is a man of taste and wants to see the mission through. Rick is also a man of taste and wants to get the hell out of here. That'll bring us to our final branching path, and one that changes the ending of the game. I'll go over them all, but let's start with the easiest, and that's Rick. Following Rick's decision, we'll knock Gale out and drag him to escape. As for the escape itself, all we have to do is run down a few hallways, say hi to a pissed off Gale who doesn't want to speak anymore, and grab some fuel for the hovercraft, which is nuclear energy, but hey, let's toss it like a potato. Rexy shows back up for our final showdown, but it's so not what I expected. It's a lot like your first run-in, where you're running again in a circle, only this time shooting whenever the Rex gets a little too close, until Rick pops out to finish the job off, but he misses. The facility starts to go haywire, the T-Rex does a dolphin dive, and then promptly gets taken by the white light by floating up. We then drive into the sunset, and credits. There is a status report at the end of the game detailing what happened to everybody and if they're alive, but we currently don't know the whereabouts of Kirk. On to ending 2. This ending we follow through with Gale's orders and go looking for Kirk. To start things off, we get some death flags.
He's a professional, first and foremost. It's the only way he operates.
Look, the guy was barely limping. Why did we let him go by himself? I don't know. Rick's busy setting up everything to escape, and we're using the tracker Gale gave us earlier to find Kirk's location, where we'll find Gale and Kirk together and find out about our true mission.
Regina, take this.
A disc?
It contains all the information on the third energy, including the details on how to use it as a weapon. Once we deliver this disc to our government, our real mission will be complete.
So basically, Kirk was never important, and it was all for information so the government can use the third energy.
Just as I suspected.
Gale dies, and God, I love Kirk.
And this is the reward for a lifetime of service to the government. Sad, isn't it?
We end up leaving the same way, except Rexy is here taking a nap now. That's not blood, it's just drool. While driving away, we'll notice something in the rear view mirror. It's Rexy. And this fight is kind of goofy. Like, don't get me wrong, he looks like he has some strong legs, but I don't know. The gimmick of this fight is just to take a shot on Rexy every time he gets a little too close, until Rick once again finishes the fight. Except Rexy is very, very persistent, so Regina tosses him some C4, and we get some good old classic Capcom one-liners.
End of the line for you, handsome. You're extinct!
The mission results are slightly different this time, where Regina goes over the loss of Gale and the now known status of Kirk.
Gale. Status. Deceased.
Due to uncontrollable circumstances, Gale had to sacrifice himself in order to protect the target. We have recaptured Dr. Kirk, who is currently negotiating future experiments with the military high command.
So, we just gave this guy another job, but he failed this experiment twice, right? Just checking.
Just as I suspected.
Okay, those are your two alternate endings, but this last ending kind of feels like the most canon ending. To achieve this ending, we have to go the Gale route to start, except we won't be heading that way immediately. Instead, we're going to be looking for another way to escape. By this point of the game, we've gotten the level 8 key card, and there's a few doors we can still unlock with it, mainly down this central hallway, which will bring us to this moving platform and eventually to a helicopter, giving us our new means of escape. Then we'll head to where we met Gale and Kirk last time and have things kind of play out the same, except a lot quicker. There's no mention of the true mission this time, but there's a subtle hint.
Thanks for the disc, Doc.
Disc?
We then all quickly make to the helicopter. Rick's still trailing behind, so we meet up with him back at the moving platform and find out he's being chased by Rexy. Now it's time for our final fight, which is yet again another shoot the dinosaur as it gets close fight, and again, it doesn't last very long. After that short stint, we're trying our best to fly away until Rick drops a bomb next to Rexy, which makes this sound.
He's still after us!
I'm gonna flash fry that dino dodo.
We all fly away into the sunset, and the report here is a mixture of both previous endings with Kirk in custody and Gale alive. Dino Crisis is a good game, and it makes a lot of sense why it's so well regarded by most people. It's definitely a lot different than I expected going into it. I fully expected a lot more creepiness to it, but it's just a lot of fun. I do think the game is a bit front-loaded though, and kind of loses its steam in the second half. The first half of the game has this exploring aspect to it alongside a few backtracking moments and connecting shortcuts to make it feel like a big facility that you fully explored. While the second half feels more like a checklist of having key items, and while survival horror games tend to be like that, the second area is a lot more condensed with less areas to explore and stuff to grab. Weapon upgrades also feel a bit weird to come by, like your new weapons they kind of just throw at you while the upgrade parts were the ones you had to actually find. Raptors were by far the best enemy designed, and you can tell how the most work put into them. They still look good and were fun to just watch how they move. These guys were practically useless, and these guys had no personality outside being a blob of color on the screen and annoying. The T-Rex looked great, and I kind of wish it showed up a bit more. Most times it was either a scripted event or boss fight, but that's more of my general feeling with enemies. Most times it's 1 or 2 enemies you come across. And don't get me wrong, 2 was perfect, as most of these enemies are pretty deadly by themselves. The Blue Raptor, in case in point, it can mess you up pretty quickly, but this game has a very isolated feeling when exploring, which is funny because you obviously have your squad around, and the chemistry between the 3 characters and even Kirk when he finally shows up are some of my favorite moments from the game. The voice acting on show here is just all around fun. Gale sounds like a captain, Rick sounds like a more friendlier teammate, and Regina comes across as incredibly charming. But hands down, my favorite has to be Kirk. He's over the top, but in a still believable way and not mustache evil villain way. It's more like the guy just wants to work on his project and be left alone. There were also so many puzzles in this game that even I started to roll my eyes a little at some parts. A lot of the time, it feels like the puzzles were added as a way to pad some game length, like using the same generator puzzle 3 times or turning the power on via puzzle blocks. Boss fights are practically non-existent in this game, which felt a bit underwhelming. The T-Rex is this big overlooking threat, and you really never deal with it in-game. It's always waiting to time out or deal enough damage until Rick helps. While that makes sense for the first real fight, doing it for the final fights of each ending feels just a little, I don't know, half-assed. There's a lot here to enjoy, and actually makes me excited to see how the sequel pans out, as typically Capcom has done a solid job when it comes to the part 2 of an entry. But I do have one question. What happened to Cooper?